The Meridian Airways agent at Chicago O'Hare's gate K-12 eyed the passport photo, then looked at the calm, older black woman standing before him. He smirked and made a decision that would detonate his life. He had no idea the woman he was about to publicly humiliate was on a mission, sent to discover if the ugly whispers about him were true. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights, the agent, a man with a military-style buzz cut and a name tag reading P. Brennan, tapped the passport. Here we go, he thought, another one trying their luck. His eyes darted from the photo to her face and back again, his jaw tightening. "This is you?" he asked. His voice was deliberately loud, meant for the other passengers in line to hear. Serena Marshall met his condescending gaze, her expression perfectly composed. "Yes, it is." 6 complaints in 90 days, she thought, her hands resting calmly on her carry-on. All from black women, all describing this exact attitude, at this gate, with this man. To anyone watching, she was just a woman in her late 50s, dressed in a tasteful blazer, on her way to Denver. Her power was in being underestimated. "I don't think so," Paul Brennan declared, shoving the passport across the counter as if it were contaminated. He drummed his thick fingers on the formica. "What's your business in Denver?" "Business development," Serena replied, her voice even and smooth. "Business development?" He repeated the words, drawing them out with exaggerated disbelief. What kind of business would that be? Security consulting. It was the complete truth, just not in a way his narrow mind could ever process. His eyes scanned her from her shoes to her neatly styled hair. He wasn't processing her answer. He was judging her entire existence. "So this is how it begins," Serena mused, "with one look that tells you that you don't belong." "I'm gonna have to run a check on this," he announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. He jerked his thumb toward the side of the boarding area. "You need to step over there. Now." Serena complied without a word, moving to stand by a support pillar. She didn't fidget. She didn't pull out her phone. She simply observed. Patience wasn't just a skill in her profession. It was the entire job. She watched him shake his head with theatrical disgust as he hammered at his keyboard. He then glanced at the next passenger, a young white man in a university sweatshirt, and gave him a knowing, conspiratorial smirk. The look was unmistakable. Can you believe the nerve of these people? That was the moment of cold, hard certainty. This was no longer just an audit to gather facts for a file. This was a live test. And Paul Brennan had no idea he was the one being graded. He waved the young man forward, his entire personality shifting in an instant. A broad, synthetic smile appeared. "Mr. Gable, enjoy Denver. We'll be boarding in just a few minutes." "Thanks, man," the student said, grabbing his ticket. The entire exchange lasted less than 5 seconds. Serena took a slow, deliberate breath as the line continued to move. A family with tired children, a lawyer shouting into his phone, a young couple holding hands. Brennan processed each of them with a quick scan, a smile, and a cheerful send-off. The line flowed for everyone. Everyone except for her. After 5 minutes that felt like an hour, Serena stepped back to the counter. "Excuse me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'd like an update on my document verification, please." Brennan didn't even look up from his screen. "It's processing," he snapped. Then, letting out a loud sigh for the benefit of his audience, he finally raised his head. The fake customer service smile was gone, replaced by a mask of pure contempt. He leaned forward, speaking to her as if she were a child. "Ma'am, let's try this again. Are you 100% positive this is your passport?" "I am," Serena stated, her gaze unwavering. "Because this picture," he said, stabbing the photo with his finger, "is a joke. It looks nothing like you. And to be honest, this entire situation stinks." A passenger sitting nearby let out an audible gasp. She glanced from Serena's dignified face to the passport in the agent's hand and frowned, seeing the obvious resemblance. "It is a valid United States passport issued 17 months ago," Serena said, her composure a shield of iron. "City of birth?" he demanded. "Baltimore." He squinted, typing furiously. "Middle name?" Serena paused for a beat. "Vivian." A triumphant sneer spread across his face. He thought he had her. He leaned back in his chair, basking in his moment of power. "This is a forgery," he declared, his voice booming across the gate area for everyone to hear. And before Serena could utter another word, he took the passport in his two meaty hands and ripped it directly in half. Rip! The sound cut through the terminal's dull roar like a gunshot. A man in a business suit muttered, "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." The two halves of Serena Marshall's passport, her identity, a federal document, lay on the counter like a piece of garbage. Paul Brennan folded his arms across his chest, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "You will wait right there for airport security," he announced to the silent, watching crowd. "You're being detained for attempting to travel on a fraudulent document." Serena looked at him, then down at the ruined pieces of her identity on the counter. The silence in the gate area was heavy and absolute. Nobody was pretending not to watch now. Phones were up, their small red recording lights blinking like angry eyes in the terminal's glare. Finally, Serena spoke, her voice dangerously quiet. "I will need you to repeat that accusation for the record," he scoffed. "You heard me." Just then, a young Meridian Airways crew member rushed to the counter. "Paul, is there a problem here?" "I've handled it," Brennan said, puffed up with his own authority. "We had a forgery situation. I've neutralized the document." The young man's eyes went wide with shock. You tore up her passport?" "It was a fake," Brennan insisted, turning back to Serena. "Ma'am, do you have any other form of identification?" Slowly and with deliberate calm, Serena reached down and opened her black leather carry-on. She did not rush. She reached inside and retrieved a slim, professional wallet. She didn't hand it to him. She simply flipped it open, revealing a gleaming gold seal and the bold, unmistakable credentials of the federal government. She held it up just long enough for the color to drain completely from the young crew member's face. "Ma'am, are you federal?" the young man stammered. Serena's voice was as cold and hard as steel. "Homeland Security, Office of the Inspector General." She snapped the wallet shut and placed it back in her bag. The smug look on Paul Brennan's face instantly evaporated, replaced by a wave of sickening, soul-crushing dread. "And I will require the full names of every gate agent and supervisor on duty this morning," Serena continued, her voice cutting through the silent boarding area. "Immediately." The smirk was gone. The power was gone. All that remained was the crushing, horrific realization of what he had just done. "You have, on camera, destroyed the passport of a federal investigator during a live compliance audit," Serena said, letting each word land like a hammer blow. "You have publicly accused a citizen of a felony, and you have illegally denied boarding. I suggest you call your supervisor. Now." He didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She stood there, a portrait of absolute control, as Paul Brennan's world crumbled around him. His face, once a mask of smug authority, was now chalk white. His folded arms were no longer a pose of defiance. They were a desperate attempt to hold himself together. The young crew member was already speaking urgently into his radio. The whispers in the crowd began to swell into a low, angry murmur. "I knew it," one man said to his wife. "He was all smiles with everyone else. Then she steps up and he flips a switch. Textbook profiling." Brennan looked around desperately, his eyes finally landing on Serena. His voice was a pathetic, strained whisper. "Look, I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding we can sort out." Serena's gaze was like granite. "You made it more than a misunderstanding the second you put your hands on my property." He visibly flinched. Just then, an airport security officer, his name tag reading Kowalski, arrived. "What's the situation here?" Serena turned her head slowly. "He destroyed a federal document. Mine, without cause." Officer Kowalski blinked. "You want to file a report, ma'am?" A woman in the front row let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh, she's filing more than a report. Check your phone." Another passenger held his up. "It's already going viral. Meridian Airways is tagged and everything." Brennan spun toward the officer, his voice cracking with panic. "She wasn't cooperating. She refused to verify who she was." "That is false," Serena stated calmly. "I provided a valid U.S. passport. I answered all of his questions. I complied with all of his instructions. The airline's own surveillance footage will confirm that." She tilted her head towards a security camera on the ceiling. "And that camera right there will confirm it too." Officer Kowalski's hand went straight to his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, I need you to preserve all surveillance from Gate K-12, effective immediately. We have a potential federal incident. The sharp click of heels on the tile announced a new arrival. A woman in a crisp navy blue blazer strode towards them, her badge identifying her as Helen Bishop, Zone Supervisor. "Mr. Brennan," she said, her voice firm and icy. "My office, now." Brennan hesitated, then followed her like a zombie, his face ashen. The supervisor turned to Serena. "Ma'am, on behalf of Meridian Airways, I am profoundly sorry. May I have a word with you in private?" "Of course," Serena nodded. As they walked toward a service corridor, a sea of phones tracked their every move. The verdict from the court of public opinion was already in. The small, beige-walled interview room was cold and sterile, furnished only with a metal table bolted to the floor. Helen Bishop closed the door, her expression all business. She was in full crisis management mode. "I'm Helen Bishop," she began. "I need to get everything on the record. Ms. Marshall, Serena Marshall." Serena reached into her carry-on, retrieved her credentials again, and slid the open wallet across the table. Bishop picked it up. Her eyes scanned the gold seal, the official photo, the ID number. She went completely still. You're conducting an official inspection?" "My work here was an audit," Serena corrected her plainly. "Your agent has now made it a criminal investigation." Helen Bishop let out a long, slow breath. The clipboard on her lap seemed utterly useless. "I see," she said, her voice tight. "I need to contact my terminal director and the airport police department." "I would assume so," Serena said. "And you will want to pull the unedited surveillance tapes from Gate K-12, from every single angle." The airline's regional office became a war room. Helen Bishop stood with two others pulled into the firestorm. Robert Shaw, a bulldog of a regional manager, and Patricia Lang, the airline's top attorney, whose face was a mask of polished steel. "We are fully committed to a thorough investigation," the lawyer, Patricia Lang, began, her voice practiced, "and we will cooperate completely with all relevant federal agencies." Serena's federal credentials lay on the polished table between them. "I'm sure you are," she said. "But let's be clear. This was not a misunderstanding. Your employee committed a felony." Robert Shaw, the regional manager, leaned forward. "We understand emotions were running high." "My emotions were never a factor," Serena cut him off. The words silenced the room, dismantling their entire damage control script. Patricia Lang shifted her strategy. "Ms. Marshall, what is your intention? Are you planning to pursue litigation?" "I am here to complete my audit," Serena stated, her gaze sweeping over their tense faces. She reached into her carry-on and placed a thick folder on the table with a soft thud. "This is my preliminary report for the Inspector General. It contains a pattern of complaints against Meridian Airways over the last 10 months. 7 of them originated at Gate K-12. 5, she paused, letting her eyes rest on each executive. Name Mr. Paul Brennan, specifically." She slid a summary across the table. All 5 were filed by black women. They each described the same behavior: baseless suspicion and demeaning treatment. She looked directly at the lawyer. "Does that pattern sound familiar to you, counselor?" The air hissed out of the room. Helen Bishop paled. Robert Shaw looked like he'd been punched. Just then, an aide rushed in, holding a tablet. "It's on the national news," she whispered, trembling. "The video has over 3 million views." Lang's composure cracked. "If we arrange a session with our diversity task force?" Serena looked at her with a hint of pity. "My job is to report facts, Ms. Lang, not to help you craft a press release." She stood and collected her folder. "You have a rapidly closing window to get ahead of this. I suggest you use it." The final reckoning came 2 hours later. Paul Brennan sat across from a stone-faced Helen Bishop and a furious Robert Shaw. "We have reviewed the footage, the videos, and Investigator Marshall's report," Helen began coldly. "It was a fake ID," Brennan insisted, his voice shrill. "It was not," Shaw growled. "She is a senior federal investigator. The U.S. Attorney's Office has already contacted us." He slid a resignation form across the table. "You have 2 options," Helen said, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. 1, you sign this and disappear. 2, you refuse. We terminate you for cause and hand our entire internal file on you, including the past complaints, to the Department of Justice. You will face federal charges for destruction of government property in a civil rights investigation. You will lose everything." Brennan stared at the paper, his hands trembling. The arrogance had evaporated, leaving only a terrified, cornered man. Seeing no escape in their icy glares, he snatched the pen and scribbled his name. "Your ID badge and all airport credentials." "Now!" Helen commanded, holding out her hand. Wordlessly, Brennan unclipped the badge that had given him so much power and placed it in her palm. It was over. His escort out was a walk of shame down gray service corridors, a small cardboard box in his hands. As he was led toward the employee parking lot, he saw them. The young crew member who had tried to intervene was standing with Officer Kowalski from the gate. They stopped walking. They didn't smile or gloat. They just watched him approach. The young man looked at Brennan, then at the box of shame in his hands, and gave a single, slow, deliberate nod. It wasn't a nod of triumph or of pity. It was a nod of finality. The system had worked.